This is Grandma Doreen's Thanksgiving and holiday turkey and stuffing and gravy recipe. I don't know where she got it or where it came from, but it's the one I remember from when I was a child, and I've kind of tweaked it, but this is basically the idea. You get one able-bodied helper, if you're lucky enough. The night before, you start by making sure your turkey is defrosted. You want to make sure by opening it up, or if you're pretty sure, or if it's still frozen, you can go ahead and soak it in the pan for 4 or 5 hours. The next morning, or the night before, you start by dicing your onion and your celery, or you can use a food processor if you have one. You melt 1 cube of butter in the pan, and your basic ingredients are going to be ground sage or poultry seasoning, granulated garlic, onion powder, salt and pepper, and butter, of course, lots of butter. Add to your simmering butter your onion and your celery, and you saute that until your onion is pretty transparent. You don't want the butter to brown at this point. You want to keep it low. You mix your stuffing cubes, and you're going to use a good herb stuffing cube and an herb stuffing breadcrumbs. You'll add those ingredients, your dry ingredients, your stuffing cubes and your breadcrumb to your butter, and then you'll add some garlic, some sage, some pepper, and some salt. You put your stuffing in a baggie and then stick it in the refrigerator until the next morning. You always want your stuffing and your bird to be the same temperature. The next morning, you unwrap your bird. You take all of the insides out of the body cavity and the rear cavity, and you set those aside in a pan of water. You take some celery, and if you're using an electric roaster, you'll put those under your rack. The reason for this is when you turn the roaster on, it tends to get pretty hot, and there's not many ingredients in it at first to bring out some water. You don't want anything to burn, so the celery will give it something moist to bring water from. Also, the celery will add some flavor, and we'll be taking that out later because a lot of people don't like that stringiness of the celery. So in a pot, you've placed your insides of your turkey, which include your gizzards and your giblets. It's typically the liver and the gizzard and the neck, of course. You put 1 cube of butter in the pan with these ingredients, along with some garlic and again some poultry seasoning or sage. Back to the turkey. You stuff the turkey loosely in the body cavity, and then you want to put the remainder of the stuffing aside, which you'll be putting in a roasting pan. You put the turkey into the pan that you're going to use, or the roaster, and you top it with about, depending on the size of your bird, 1/2 to 1 full cube of butter. You also top the bird with those same ingredients, your sage, your garlic, your onion, and a little bit of salt and pepper. In a separate pan, we put the stuffing, and that will be cooking, and we'll be adding some juices to it later from our giblet pan. The giblet pan will cook down through the day, so you will be adding some chicken broth to your giblet pan. Several times as you baste your turkey, you're going to be taking some of the juices from your giblet pan, and you'll be adding it over the turkey as a baste. Once the turkey is well on its way to cooking, you won't need to add very many more juices because the juices will start coming out from the turkey. When the turkey's done, you'll know because the wings and the legs will pull easily away from the body, and you'll see the meat starting to come off of the bone. As long as you use the right size turkey and you don't overstuff your electric roasting pan, the turkey will get a nice brown coating. Once the turkey's done, take the turkey out of the roasting pan, take out your rack, and remove the celery. This will leave you with some nice golden juices. Set your turkey aside and wrap it with foil so it'll stay warm. You're not going to be slicing your turkey at this point. By this time, your giblet pan has cooked down quite a bit. If it hasn't, you will need to turn the heat up a little bit, but you have to watch it. You want it to cook down so that the pan becomes almost dry. The butter will then appear and it will brown at this point among these other ingredients, the neck bone and the gizzard and the liver. Just slightly brown. You don't want it to cook too long because once it burns, it's ruined. Once you get a nice sizzle and a nice brown color, and you'll start to smell those rich juices with that butter, you're going to add water again and or chicken broth. And you're going to stir it so that you'll loosen all of those wonderful brown bits off the bottom of the pan, and those will be going back into your gravy. You only want to add probably a cup or two of juices because you want this to remain very concentrated. This is what you're going to be using for your starter, for your gravy. You remove the neck bone and the liver and the gizzard, and you take approximately a large spoon, a tablespoon size lump or turkey liver. The turkey liver is very, very moist, and it'll dissolve in your hand. You're going to dissolve it into a powder and put it back into your drippings. You turn up the heat on your drippings, and you'll add, as it's about at a medium to a medium-high heat, you'll add your flour. How much flour you add is going to dictate how much gravy you have. However, you don't want it to be overly floury. So you never want to add so much flour that it looks as though the flour is not being absorbed by the liquids. It probably will look like a lot of flour at first, but once you stir it around, you'll bring it to a boil. It'll start to even sizzle again, and you'll hear some of the flour frying in the butter. That's what you want. You want that sizzle and you want that brown. Once that happens, you want to make sure and keep your heat to where you can work with it. In other words, it's still got a little bit of a bubble or a sizzle to it, but it's not burning. When you reach that point, you want to make sure and stir that flour with either a good fork or some sort of a blending tool to bring all those ingredients together. It may be a little bit lumpy. Don't worry if it's just a little bit of lumps, because you'll be taking those out as you go forward. You'll take your liquids from your roasting pan and add about a third of those back to the mixture once it's nice and thick, like a light brown paste. You add that back in, put the pan down, and then go back to your fry pan. You're going to be standing over it and being very attentive at this point. You use your wand beater and mix it some more. Again, you're losing some of those lumps of flour. You want to mix it until all the liquid is absorbed, and again, it's all about the same consistency, keeping it at a bubble. Once it's at a bubble, you'll see that it's still too thick, and you'll add another third of your liquid. You'll do the same thing, repeat with your wand by bringing it to a boil, making it all a consistent thickness, and then you'll add your last third. At this point, your gravy should be about done. If it is still way too thick, you'll add more liquid. I would taste it to make sure it's not too salty, and if it's not too salty, you could use chicken broth or turkey broth. If it is a bit salty, you would want to use water to bring that thickness down to your gravy thickness. Now you know it's as thick as it's going to get when it bubbles. So if it bubbles and you know, and that's when you'll determine whether you need to add more water. If it's too watery, you're going to have to let it bubble out and cook down to get some of the liquid out of it, so that it'll thicken up as to the gravy consistency that you want. Now, all through your turkey cooking, you've been adding a little bit of drippings also to your stuffing. I would say probably every time you baste the turkey, which is approximately once every 45 minutes to an hour, you would take a scoop of your giblet drippings and you add that to your stuffing. This is why, too, you're going to reduce that giblet drippings. Not only is it going to reduce because it's cooking, it's boiling or simmering, but it's going to reduce because of the fact that you're adding it to your turkey and you're adding it to your stuffing. So your stuffing should be about done now. So you take that out and put that aside, and when you start carving your turkey, you'll take the stuffing that's in the turkey, which will be a lot gooier than the stuffing from the roasting pan, and you'll add it to and mix it together. You don't ever want to over stir your stuffing, by the way, the stuffing that's in the roasting pan, because it will start to break down and turn into a mush instead of nice looking stuffing. So you can carve the bird at this point and put that aside. And there you have it, your ingredients and your instructions for Grandma Doreen's roasted Thanksgiving or holiday turkey with stuffing and gravy.
I got to go home. Let me go home. I'm just too far from where you are. I wanna come home. And I feel just like I'm living someone else's life. It's like I just stepped outside when everything was going right. And I know just why you could not come along with me. This was not your dream, but you always believed in me. Another winter day has come and gone away in either Paris or Rome, and I wanna go home. Let me go home. And I'm surrounded by a million people. I still feel alone. Let me go home. Oh, I miss you, you know.